Hi everybody, it's Oksana. Today I'm going to show you some different patterns, some different weaving patterns that you can do on 3 base wires. So I have 3 20 gauge wires here, but of course you can use any gauge you want. This is just a weaving pattern. It's meant to, or several weaving patterns rather, they're just meant to kind of give you an idea, and then you can use them in any finished project that you're making that has 3 base wires instead of, you know, some other weave. So this is not finished project. This is just some different weaving techniques on 3 base wires. These are round, dead soft wires. I'm using a 26 gauge to weave, but again, you can use whatever you want. 28 gauge works well. So for this particular pattern, the very first thing I'm going to do, and this is not part of the pattern, this is just how I like to have my wire get secured, is I just put my wire right above that very bottom wire, see? Right there, and then I hold that tail with my fingers. So it looks like my wire is coming out right here, but this isn't part of the pattern because when I bring this up, it looks like a little loop around the very bottom wire, and so just ignore that. That's just how I like to start my wire. So now the pattern starts. You're bringing your wire from back to front, right in between the top and the middle wires. Here it is coming towards the front. And then you are pushing it, you know, with your nail or with your finger. And then I like to just push it down. This really helps it be neat and not, you know, all separated. And now I'm bringing it up again and doing the same thing, bringing it in between the top and middle wires and down. So now it looks like 2 wraps around the bottom 2 wires. Now I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it over the top, and I'm bringing it in between the bottom and the middle wire. So this is making wraps around the top 2 wires. And that's the pattern. So I'm going to go a little faster now. Around the bottom 2 twice, around the top 2 twice. And what you can do to change this up a bit is instead of 2 times, you can do once, or you can do 3 times or 4 times. It's really different ways. I'm going to go ahead and do 3 for you, just really quick to show you how it looks, the difference that it makes. It's just going to look like wider, little wider pieces here. So any of these patterns you can vary even more by changing the number of these little wraps that you do. So here it is with the 2 compared to the 3. As you can see, it looks a little wider. So now we're going to do a completely different pattern. And for this pattern, bringing my wire right here, right above, from back to the front, right above the very bottom wire. And I'm going to go 1, do it again, 2, and one more time, 3. 3 little loops. Then I'm bringing it right in between the top and middle wires. And I'm making 1 loop. Then I'm bringing it around the top 2 wires, and I'm making 1 loop. Then I'm bringing it underneath the very top wire, and I'm making 1 loop. And then I'm bringing it right above the very bottom one, and I'm doing my 3 loops again. So 1, 2, and 3. So this pattern looks like this little kind of spiky thing. So then if you do it again, I will do it again real quick. It'll just, you'll see, just looks like little spikes. So around the bottom 2, around the top 2, around the bottom 2 again. And then I'm just going to do 1 loop after it so it doesn't unravel. So little spikes just like this. Now there's variation that you can do with these spikes. So let me do 2 more loops here so I have nice spacing, and let me show you another type of little spike that you can do. So for this next one, we're going to start out the same. We're going to go once around the bottom 2 wires, like so, and then we're going to go once around the top 2 wires as well. But now, instead of going back around the bottom 2 like we did previously, we're going to go all the way up around the front, and we're going to come all the way down like this. And then we're going to go all the way up again, and we're going to go around the top 2 and around the bottom 2. And let me just do my 3 little loops, 3 single loops around just the bottom wire. So this is another kind of little spike or little tree looking thing that you can do. Now you can vary the number of stitches as well. So for example, these first 2, you can do them with 2 wraps. Let's do 2 wraps around the bottom just so you can see what it looks like. So 1, 2 around the bottom 2, only 1 around the top 2, and then 1, 2 around the bottom 2 again. And now I'm just doing my single wraps. And by the way, I'm doing 3, but you can do any number you want. That's just like the spacing. So there's a little bit of spacing in between these little patterns. So here's another little pattern. You can do 2 and then 2 and 2. Let me show you what that would look like. So if you do 2 and 2 and 2, look like that. All kinds of different variations you can do. So for this variation, I'm going to do a wrap around the bottom 2 wires. I'm going to do a wrap around the top 2 wires, just 1, and 1 around the very top, just like this. Now I'm going to come down and do my 3 single loops. So that looks like almost like a little hill or something. It's a little bit spaced out because of that wrap up top there. Now if you want this little hill to be more defined, like right now it's like pointy. If you want it to be more of a plateau, you can do 2 wraps around the bottom 2 wires, 2 wraps around the top 2 wires, 2 wraps around the very top wire, and then going down the same way, 2 wraps around the top 2, 2 wraps around the bottom 2. And let me just do 3 singles around the very bottom wire just to have that spacing there. I'm going to try and squish it together. And there you have a bigger hill that's flatter on top. So you can have that going across. Another pattern that you can do is this one here. So we start out in the bottom and we do 1 wrap around just the very bottom wire. So you start in between the bottom 2 wires and you make 1 wrap. And then you put your weaving wire in between the top 2 wires and you make 1 wrap. And then you put your wire above the very top wire, and you make one wrap. So it looks like 3 little wraps, just like this. 1, 1, 1. Then you put your wire up top and you do one wrap around the top 2 wires. And then put it in between the top and bottom wire, and you do one wrap around the bottom 2 wires. And that's a pattern. Then you would repeat it. Then you would do the one around the bottom, one around the top, the middle, and one around the top. And then you would, so you go up by 1s and you come down by 2s. So when you come down, you go the top 2, bring it up, and bottom 2. So that's the pattern, and it looks better when it's nice and tight. Then it almost can look like, I don't know how well I can tighten it without any pliers here, but looks like almost there's like no spacing. It looks really nice, especially when you have a long piece of it going on. So one other way that you could do this pattern is you can add an extra step. So let me start from the beginning. So one around the bottom, one around the middle, one around the top. Then I'm going down by 2. And then I'm, instead of, going back up by 1, I'm bringing my wire all the way up, all the way over, and I'm bringing it down so it looks like one big loop around all 3 wires. And then I'm bringing it back up, coming up right in here above the bottom wire, and starting with the single loops around the bottom, around the middle, and around the top. So I added in one little extra step, and that is the one loop around all 3 wires. And let me do that a few times for you real quick, because I feel like with this pattern you really can't see what it looks like until you have gone for a while with it. And this is one of the patterns that needs to be tightened a little bit extra. Like, I wouldn't let it go too long before you make sure your wraps are nice and tight. And this is also one of the harder patterns, I feel like, that takes longer to do than some of the others. So here's what that looks like. You can vary this by doing different numbers, just like some of the other ones. You can, do different numbers of coils and stuff like that. You can change this up. All right, so moving on, here's another pattern. For this pattern, I want my starting position for my wire to be right in between the top 2 wires like this. And I'm gonna put it underneath the middle wire. Actually, wait. It's unraveling that. It's unraveling this little pattern. So, okay, now, I'll do it now. So I'm putting in between the top 2, bringing it down, putting it underneath the bottom 2, basically, and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm just wrapping around the middle wire. That's all I'm doing. And I'm going to do that 4 times. So that's 3, one more time, 4. 4 times like this. Now, I'm going to wrap around all 3 wires as many times as you want. So I'm going to do twice. Just literally just around and around. And now, when your wire's in the back, you bring it back through the top 2 and then underneath the middle one to coil it around the middle wire again 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can really vary the number of coils here, and it'll really change up this pattern. You can do, instead of 2, you can do a lot, or you can just do 1, or instead of 4, you can do maybe 1 or 2 to really change this pattern a lot. I'm going to just do it one more time just to show you. I think it's hard to get an idea for these patterns when I don't make a long enough little string of them. Alright, so here you can see the pattern emerging. This is a pretty one. I like this one. What else you can do is with the same starting point with the 4 wraps around the middle wire, you can do 1 wrap around the top 2, 1 wrap around the bottom 2, and then do the 4. So instead of the big wraps around all 3, we're just doing top 2, bottom 2. Now I'm doing the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that looks slightly different. I think that's another neat look. Now you can do 2 wraps instead of the single wrap that I just did. You can do 2 around the top 2, 2 around the bottom 2, and then go back to that middle wire and do the 4, or however many you like, around the middle wire. It's another way to do it. Here's what that would look like. So lots of slight variations that you can do. And of course, you can combine any of these patterns. You can do, one of these little spikes, and then do, one of these little things, and kind of alternate them to create really kind of unique, long, complex patterns. But here's what I have so far, and hopefully this is helpful. So thank you so much for watching, and I will